Hello, Uta here. I've got some new duds. Finally, something new. I had the bean bucks. So this cost me $5. Now, this is a sort of call for trans widows to get in touch with me one way or the other. The best way is through the contact form on my WordPress blog, Uta Hagen, grasswidow.wordpress.com in the contact form. I think I'm also on LinkedIn as Uta Hagen. I think I signed up one night recently. And I reached out to someone through that who I believe is considers herself a trans widow. So the first one, though, we're getting back to a woman whose name probably, at least previously, was Donna Hogg, Hogge, wife of Robert Hogg. And now Robert Hogg calls himself Monica Helms. Now, this person is famous because he designed the so-called trans flag. And he's quite a character and was pretty openly unfaithful to his wife and pretty openly abandoned their children on weekends when he was going out to drag shows and sex clubs and this type of thing. And now he calls himself a lesbian. So this is his own writing. Yes. He wrote a book called Not Just a Flag, celebrating himself and the, if you ask me, artistically challenged pastel colors, stereotyping baby girls and baby boys, and maybe making some kind of signal regarding children. I'm not going to go any further into what kind of signaling that is. John Euler and I will probably talk about that tomorrow. I will be interviewing with John Euler of John Euler Station channel, JONUHLER, and I have the interview is now up with Ryan Pennington at Ryan Pennington Station, RYAN, and Pennington spelled PENNINGTON. And thank you to one of the commenters on our interview, or all of the commenters, thank you, but especially the one who said that she just bought my book. So, yes, I really do think that this Donna, I believe if she had taken her husband's name, that it would have been Hogg, and maybe she kept it because they had two sons, and their last name was probably Hogg. So that's an interesting thing. I don't know anything about where she is. I think they lived out in the Southwest when he was gallivanting around with his secret life and so on. But this is from Redux, REDUXX.com, probably written by Genevieve Gluck. When writing about the birth of his first child, Helms expresses a jealousy of his wife as he watched her go into labor. Now, I like to think that when I went into labor both times with our sons, that Nettie was saying to himself, gee, I wonder what I could do to help. And the second time I decided to try walking, which was quite successful. That labor was only 5 hours. And he had to schlep behind me with the folding chair that I sat down on during contractions. And I do honestly believe that this practice, if you're able to do it, might shorten the labor. It was quite intense. Yes, the first one was 12 hours. The second one was 5 hours. But so this is what this person, who now calls himself Monica Helms, says about his jealousy during the time when his wife is dealing with what a woman goes through in natural childbirth. He says, I felt especially proud of Donna for all she had to endure during childbirth. That being said, I have to say that despite all the pain she went through, I felt strangely envious that she carried and gave birth to both of our boys, and I didn't. Just think about that. In November 2022, while Helms was in the process of selecting a transgender daughter to adopt, this person has moved on into a so-called lesbian relationship with another man who ideates into a female persona who is 26 years younger or something. And they are now adopting a 14-year-old boy who thinks he's a girl. I guess in Georgia. Yes, he authored an article for The Advocate in which he states that as a child he had prayed for God to turn me into a girl because he knew he had been born in the wrong body. He condemned the extremist beliefs behind a number of bills being considered in various states that would restrict the medical transitioning of children. Now, the reason I read this word salad, is that it is these adult men who are rewriting their own childhoods and expressing the fantasy that children should have the option of saying they are the opposite sex, and that a child could say, I want to take these chemicals or be injected with these chemicals because I think they will make me into what I want to be. And they don't know that it can cause liver failure and that it stops the bone mineralization. And then in Sweden and a couple of other countries, they have stopped doing this. Please take a look at a channel called Thoughts on Things and Stuff for the translation of the Swedish film Trans Train, which documents with x-rays the bone demineralization of these children. And I postulate that a number of people who aren't looking too good, such as Jazz Jennings and Petra, someone who was the earliest medical transitioner in Germany. I think that if you look at what's going on with their bodies, it's not looking very healthy. So this is one reason I feel very strongly that trans widows, that is, women who were married to men who ideate for themselves a female persona, that we have to speak out. Now, the next woman took back her maiden name, and she is named in an article that's named in a couple of articles that are published in the, in the press out of Rhode Island. And so I'm going to use her name, Debbie Jamison. I reached out to you on LinkedIn, and please feel free to reach out to me at my blog or here in the comments if someone helps us to connect. Because her probably now ex-husband, because he says on Facebook that he's single. His name was Donald Anderson, and now he calls himself Donnie Anderson. And this is also from Redux, REDUXX.com. He says the following. He also admitted that his wife was devastated when he came out to her. In one interview from 2018, his wife, Debbie Jamison, described it as salt in the wound when boxes of women's clothes flowed into the house just days after Anderson announced his transition to her. Now, did she get to order a whole new wardrobe too? Debbie, please contact me and let me know. I would like to know. I think we need to tell our stories from our point of view, not from the crazed word salad point of view. I couldn't stop crying. These are her words. I couldn't stop crying, Jamison says, recalling that she fled the house 2 days after Anderson came out. She sought therapy following Anderson's transition, as did his 2 daughters. The couple had been married for 23 years. While Jamison initially resolved to try and keep the marriage together, Anderson's Facebook now states that he's single. And isn't that so interesting how we really don't have any idea whether she moved out or what happened to her? I really hope that she's all right. They were both in their late 60s after 23 years of marriage when he just suddenly announced this one day out of the blue. Despite his wife's negative reaction, Anderson recalled being content after announcing his transition. He says after 6 long decades, he emerged out of hiding his transgender identity. I'm adding in, just like a butterfly. In what he calls his own exodus. Oh, now we're going to get biblical. A reference to the stories from religious texts. He continues to address his family's devastation with these words: "Freedom is never cheap. There is always a price. The cost was not just mine, but the pain was felt by my beloved family." Nevertheless, he states all this contentment. Oh, and he's helping to spread the word. In addition to his work in religious institutions and politics, because he's a reverend, Anderson provides guidance to college students, offering an inside track on the transgender experience, what it means to decide and act upon the fact of one's identity and to live it openly and proudly. I don't know, until you have osteoporosis or kidney failure or early onset dementia. Since his transition, Anderson has become a vocal activist, sometimes turning up to protest those critical of gender ideology. And he says, his own words, "I believe with all my heart in free speech. I believe in the marketplace of ideas. I believe that we should be confronted and talk to people who see the world differently than we do. But my friends, there is a limit to free speech." Like, for example, my ex-wife doesn't get to tell her story. They were recruiting people, he says, about the gender critical conference. Trying to prevent children from being medicalized because their bones won't mineralize and things like this. And he's projecting back into his rewritten childhood. Okay, I'm done with the Uta commentary. He says that gender critical people are recruiting people to be a part of legislative efforts that will make it more difficult for our children to realize who they are. He needs to talk to the detransitioners. I'm starting to think it's a 25 or 30% who detransition by 10 years after medicalization. Okay, I promised I wasn't going to do any more Uta commentary. I can't help myself. And by the way, while I'm interrupting myself, Peridot Eyes, Peridot Eyes, Eyes, YouTube channel. You've got to go there. she's got her own Dylan reaction things where she calls him pumpkin and sweet pea. God, I've got to figure out how to do the link and interview her on the Utagan channel. She's a construction worker. Okay. So what he does is he says this business about the suicide narrative. And this is so interesting because he doesn't say that he himself was so suicidal and he didn't so-called transition until he was in his late 60s. And he says that is an absolute positive fact that we're going to lose children to suicide if we don't affirm them. Now, what he says about his childhood and the indication that he knew himself that he must actually be a female soul is that he played around with his aunt's makeup. I can't find anything else here. So he says, also there's this, it's all about the colors. Why is it always pink? Pink used to be a male color, actually. For years, my fantasy was to preach openly in a pink clergy shirt. Don't all clergy just about always wear just white collars? I mean, my own grandfather was a Lutheran minister. Yeah, anyway, I keep interrupting. I can't help it. I'm sorry. So let me repeat that. His words. For years, my fantasy was to preach openly in a pink clergy shirt, fully expressing the fact that I am a woman. That fantasy is now my reality. Amazing. Amazing. This is someone who was supposedly trained in ethics. Okay. And he believes there's a limit to free speech. So, yes. We really need to stick together, ladies, and be well in mind and body, always.